everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and it's my favourite time of the week because it's Friday, it's time to get down, and it's time to look as well at my wrestlers of the week. It's week number 30. Where has the time gone? So we've got various bits and pieces to look at this week, some WWE stuff, some New Japan stuff, you know the drill. It's all the best wrestling of the week, and it's my top 10 wrestlers of the week, and then at the end, we'll take a look at the league table. But first, let's have a look at those honourable mentions. Quite a lot this week to talk about actually. Drew Gulak and Walter picked up big wins on 205 Live and NXT UK respectively. Shingo Takagi, Naito, Kenta, all the G1 lads that didn't quite make this list but are still putting in excellent performance after excellent performance. The G1 really makes it hard this time of year on Wrestlers of the Week. And also, everyone on the Dragon Gate card at the Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival, which many are saying is the best show of the year so far, top to bottom. And I did watch it, and don't worry, because we might see a couple of faces from that show on the top 10 itself. But I couldn't fit everyone in, obviously, so I've just wanted to give a general shout out to everybody who wrestled at the Dragon Gate Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival. Arguably the pay-per-view of 2019 so far. Of course it was show of the year. Bloody Ultimo Dragon showed up in Dragon Gate. The reunion of people were crying. Number 10 this week is a man formerly known as Shane Strickland, but now he goes under the name of Isaiah Swerve Scott. Yes, as I mentioned, you may be more familiar with Scott as Shane Strickland, and he picked up quite a few points last year on Wrestlers of the Week, actually, thanks to his excellent run in Evolve. You might also be familiar with him if you were a fan of Lucha Underground back when that was still making wrestling shows. He was Killshot. Sorry to just totally break kayfabe there, but Shane Strickland, Isaiah Swerve Scott, Killshot, they're all the same person and they're all good at wrestling. He is good at wrestling. He's just one man and he's good at wrestling. He's one of the rising stars of NXT, but this week, Scott actually made an appearance in the main event of 205 Live, taking on Drew Gulak, one of our honourable mentions this week. And it was a pretty entertaining bout, actually. There's been some especially good matches on 205 Live recently over the past few weeks, and this one was no exception. There was a unique little story in place with Drew Gulak working the hand, and Scott did a great job of being a sympathetic babyface, really selling the hand, allowing it to affect his offense, and eventually succumbing to Drew Gulak. I think that was the right call as well. You don't want Gulak losing or even drawing against someone, even if it's a newcomer, just because he's still pretty fresh into his run as the Cruiserweight Champion. So well booked, well executed, great 205 Live debut from Isaiah Swerve Scott, and no complaints here. 1 point. But as good as an underdog babyface performance as that was from Scott, there was a better one this week in WWE, and that came courtesy of a man known as Trent Seven on NXT UK. It's a shame to me that most people will only know Trent Seven as one half of Mustache Mountain, and perhaps the less acclaimed half alongside the younger and I guess more successful in the WWE sphere, Tyler Bate. But I think that Trent Seven really brings something to the table as a singles competitor as well, and that was on full display at Download Festival, which was many weeks ago now, but they're still doing NXT UK tapings. They're still airing the ones that they shot at Download. It all makes sense, don't worry about it. Seven main evented this week's NXT UK, taking on Walter in, I believe, non-title action, but he still took the match very, very seriously. This is because there was a strong storyline building up to it, with Tyler Bate having been recently beaten down by all the members of Walter's Imperium stable, while Seven was handcuffed to the ring rope and just looked on going, Tyler! Tyler! It was proper emotional. It was like Titanic. So that obviously meant that Seven was all business. Normally, Mustache Mountain come out a bit like, na-na-na-na-na-na. Or to the WWE non-official version of Sledgehammer that CFOS knocked up for them. But this time he was all business, marching down to the ring and eventually just jumping Walter during his entrance with a nice low pay through the bottom and middle ropes. And again, like Isaiah Scott on 205 Live, Seven was an awesome, sympathetic babyface. He really took the fight to Walter, as Seven often does. I remember having a similar sort of match against Johnny Moss for WCPW when I worked there, and they were just chopping the hell out of each other. There were predictably a lot of chops in this match too, but eventually Walter was put over strong by Seven and made to look like an absolute beast. They did the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn finish with Walter just powerbombing Seven again and again, and Seven gradually selling it more and more until eventually the referee just had to call off the match. There was also an awesome visual on the outside of the ring with all the members of Imperium coming down and not interfering, just standing guard at the bottom of the ramp just in case anyone tried to, join in and save Trent Seven, and it was just a great visual. So good stuff on, I guess, WWE's second tier programming, 205 Live and NXT UK. Now let's move over to that show I was talking about in the honourable mentions, Dragon Gate's Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival 2019, maybe the show of the year. And let's talk about those lads from the RED stable, the stable that Pac is a part of. They're basically the dickheads, the heels of Dragon Gate. My number 8 this week is a member of RED, or Red, Big R Shimizu. That's big, letter R, Shimizu, not Oshimitsu. That sounds like a Tekken character. No, this man is a serious, heavy-hitting professional wrestler. He doesn't mess about with swords and that. He was part of many people's match of the event and many people's tag team match of 2019 so far as well, which was basically a 3-team tag team match. So we had like one member of each team in the ring at the same time. It was kind of a triple threat tag team match with elimination rules as well, so there were 2 falls to get the victory. So Big R was teaming with his regular tag partner Eita against Tribe Vanguard and Ishii and Doi, and basically this match was kind of a nice mixture between sensible technical wrestling and a spot fest, all wrapped together and all wrestled at a frantic pace. It was the very, pinnacle of the Dragon Gate style. And honestly, if I could, I would have included every guy in the match on this list, but it would have taken away from too many other great performances elsewhere in the wrestling world. So I have decided to include Big R because he was on the winning team, picking up the Open the Twin Gate Championship, Dragon Gate's tag team titles, alongside his partner. And speaking of his partner, let's take a look at number 7. Number 7 is Big R's tag team partner and now also co-Open the Twin Gate champion, Eita or Eita. I'm never quite certain which way to pronounce it. He looks like such a dickhead, doesn't he? Great stuff. He's the little man of the pairing, but that doesn't mean that he's like a coward or anything. He can wrestle his arse off as well. In fact, he actually picked up the winning fall for the team at the end of the match. And I think pretty much this was probably the best tag team match of 2019. I've racked my brain trying to think of a better one, and on balance, having watched it, I think I do enjoy it just a smidge more than the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers at Double or Nothing. Obviously, I was there live for that one, which helped add to the excitement and everything, but even taking that into account, I think this tag match was probably a little bit more, I guess, in line with my own tastes. I like a spot fest now and then, but I do enjoy good storytelling too, and I think this match may have had the Double or Nothing match trumped when it comes to storytelling. Dave Meltzer summed it up pretty well. Let's read what he had to say about it in The Observer. He said, "This was very much like a Young Bucks versus Pentagon and Phoenix style match, but more athletically explosive." Yeah, maybe, I can see where he's coming from. Harder hitting, definitely. Less craziness and flying, definitely. But the conditioning of these guys was something to see. Even with the breaks in a tag this long, full speed ahead, the pace never slowed. And I think that is a big reason as well why it is probably my favourite tag team match of the year. I'm definitely forgetting like an obvious candidate as well, aren't I? Let me know if you can think of any in the comments section down below, please. Number 6 is a very handy one. Not only is it one of my favourite wrestlers around today, Pac, it's Pac, it's Pac there, but also if you look there, you can see more updated pictures of Big R and Eita, because I couldn't find like new ones to use. It's okay, that's what the lads look like in 2019, it's okay. But Pac now finds himself in a very interesting position. He main evented this excellent wrestling event, and basically he is no longer the Open the Dreamgate champion. He lost the title, and I think that makes him one of the most interesting wrestlers in the world today in terms of his positioning in the wider wrestling landscape. Said the word wrestling a lot in the past few sentences, haven't I? The reason why I say this is because, yes, while in Dragon Gate, Pac's title reign was wonderful and served a purpose, and every title match he had was excellent, including this one, outside of Dragon Gate, it was a bit more of a hindrance. We couldn't really see Pac to his full potential. Personally, like for example, checking out matches he had on the UK scene when he came back to England after leaving WWE, because he was Dragon Gate's top champion, you knew he wasn't going to lose. He was either going to win or there was going to be a screwy finish of some sort. He was never going to take a pinfall or submission, and that did rob a lot of his matches of a satisfying conclusion. And also, of course, we had that whole thing with AEW where he was supposed to wrestle Hangman Page at Double or Nothing, and then all those complications got in the way, and that never happened either. Now that he's not champion anymore, that will hopefully give Pac a bit more free reign in the wider world of wrestling, and hopefully we can see him match up against some opponents where there's real suspense to his matches once again, because apart from the title defenses in Dragon Gate, I do still feel like maybe the fact he was champion did rob the rest of us of a little something. This match was fantastic, by the way. Every single one of his title defenses has had such a big match feel. Every single match feels like a boxing heavyweight clash for the top title. It feels really legit, especially with the national anthems playing beforehand and everything, and just his general body language and psychology, and the fact that he's a proper, really good wrestler, like one of the best in the world. That also helps a little bit as well. Number 5, Will Ospreay. Now, right, okay, so Ospreay had a match with his Chaos stablemate and faction leader Kazuchika Okada in the G1 Climax. One of the matches I was most looking forward to in all of the G1 this year. It was really, really good. It was a really good match. But, right, and it might be a surprise to hear me say this, right, and I would like to again clarify, I thought this was a brilliant match, a really, really good match, but Meltzer's been saying, and a few people online have been, there's been a lot of different opinions, but let's talk about Meltzer's because he's the guy with the star ratings. He give it, I think, 5 3/4 stars and said it's one of the best matches he's ever seen. I really, once again, really enjoyed the match. Great performance by both men. I didn't think it was that good. Like, it was really good. It wasn't like my favourite match of the year or anything, but I can't work out if that means that I'm just a peasant who doesn't appreciate good wrestling when I see it. It's thrown me into a bit of an existential crisis, guys. But yeah, the storytelling here was spot on. The athleticism was absolutely spot on, of course. And it was two of the best wrestlers in the world having a fantastic match against one another. So on a positive note, that's why Ospreay's got some points this week. It was a wonderful match. I do highly recommend you check it out. I just don't think it was one of like the best matches in the history of wrestling. I don't know. I thought it was really, really good. Really, really good stuff. I'm so scared he's going to attack me when he next sees me. Moving swiftly on to number 4, his opponent, Kazuchika Okada, the Rainmaker. Now, Okada won the match after just a stunning sequence of counters and reversals in the closing stretch. And also, I think there was one point where he reversed the Stormbreaker by kind of just floating out of the powerbomb setup and just landing on his feet in an unnatural way. It was like he'd almost been photoshopped and just cut out and just rotated and landed on his feet. The sort of athleticism, I guess, that you don't really often see from Okada, even though we all know he's got it in his locker when he hits that drop kick and everything. He doesn't like flip about or twist about in the air much, and he did then, and I was like, bloody hell, Okada. That's really good stuff. I mean, you don't want to see him do it in every match because it's not really his game, but for him to bust out something like that once in a while, lovely stuff. But yes, Okada did win the match after several Rainmakers to his smaller opponent, and I would have had this match, right? A little bit of fantasy booking going on right now. I would have had this match be a time limit draw. Obviously, I'm biased in favour of Ospreay because he's one of my favourite guys in wrestling right now, but I just think that would have really added to this because every single Okada-Ospreay match in New Japan so far has been the same story. Ospreay almost getting the win, but Okada just being too strong. And every time Ospreay's come a little bit closer, but it's the same story at the end of the day. And I just think maybe if this had gone to a time limit draw, that could have led to some pretty groundbreaking storytelling going forwards. But that's just nitpicking. It was still a really good match. Okada picked up the victory, and I can't wait for his match against Kenta. I think that's coming up tomorrow. That's going to be pretty good stuff. Mr. New Japan against Mr. Noah. Mr. Noah sounds absolute. Mr. Noah. Go and build an arc, Kenta. Go on, mate. But yeah, no, Mr. New Japan against Mr. Noah. It's going to be intense. Number 3, the new Open the Dream Gate champion and potentially the new ace of Dragon Gate, Ben K. What a week for him. Biggest week of his career so far. So Ben K wrestled Pac and, as you'll have worked out by now, took the Open the Dream Gate championship from him, and he is now the top guy in Dragon Gate. He's the top babyface on the scene. He's vanquished Pac. We'll see what Pac does in retaliation, I guess, but for now, this is very much Ben K's moment. Was it the best match of the week? No, it was one of the best matches of the week in my opinion, but it was good enough, at least, to justify the big title switch. Often, if these big title switches happen and there's a big shift in the landscape of the roster, I think often if the match is a little bit of a disappointment, then it can ruin the whole thing. In this case, it was easily good enough to totally justify the title switch. Ben K was the picture-perfect Brazilian babyface, and even though it wasn't like an elite level 5-star match or anything, it was still very, very good and a great emotional moment. There were some huge spots as well. For example, Ben K like hitting Pac with a running spear through the ropes, almost like Big E, but maybe even more reckless, in a good way. Pac doing a shooting star press onto a stack of chairs with Ben K trapped underneath. Ben K, maybe the signature moment of the match, Ben K no-selling a superplex, popping up to his feet and just drilling Pac with a spear. Now, that often would make me go like, oh, you've just no-sold a superplex. But in rare instances, when the storytelling demands it, I can forgive that sort of thing, and actually, it did enhance the drama of the match. There was a great moment in the ring afterwards as well, with Ben K being surrounded by members of the roster, posing with his new title, and just seeming every inch the new ace of Dragon Gate, which is very interesting to see given those stories and these rumours that Triple H met with Dragon Gate officials recently, and if they try and break into Japan and maybe set up like an NXT Japan or something, maybe they've got their eye on Ben K as one of their stars of the future. That is wild speculation from me there, but we'll just see what happens. Number 2, Jon Moxley, the Death Rider. Oh my god, Moxley has been on an absolute tear recently, and that continued this week with 2 brilliant matches in the G1. One against Ishii, one against Takagi. I'll talk about the Takagi one first. Really good match, both really solid guys. Excellent match, in fact. But let's now talk about the one with Ishii. The one with Ishii was such a good match. Maybe maybe my favourite match of the G1 so far. It was a wild brawl. They went in the crowd, they went all around the arena, they were hitting each other with weapons, there was a table spot. The match in the ring was great as well. It was stiff. It was everything. Just imagine a Moxley versus Ishii match, as we all were when the G1 participants were announced. Let's just imagine what that match would be and imagine it being about as good as it could possibly be. That's what this match was. It delivered on every level. Everyone loved it. 5 stars from Meltzer, however much stock you put in his opinion, but I like the fact that Moxley's now got a 5-star match under his belt. And yes, fully deserved. I loved it. And then his match against Takagi was good as well later on in the week. Also, his promo stuff backstage has been excellent and hilarious and very aggressive and threatening at times. He actually grabbed some reporters by the collar during his most recent press conference to ask them who's going to win the G1, and they looked genuinely terrified. I don't know if they were briefed that he was going to do that actually, but it all helped make his character just as compelling as it can be, and it's so refreshing to see. Moxley is still, at the time of recording, undefeated in G1 action. Does this mean that he's going to make the final? I don't think so. I still think Naito is going to make the final, and possibly meet Ibushi, although Kenta's looking pretty strong as well now. And even though my original prediction was Ibushi, I'm starting to think maybe Naito is going to win the G1. I don't think it'll be Moxley anyway, but I'd love to see it. You just love to see that. He's been great so far, but he hasn't been my MVP of the G1. That honour goes to another man who we're going to talk about right now. So this week's number 1 and my wrestler of the week for the second week in a row, it's none other than the Stone Pitbull, Tomohiro Ishii. Like Moxley, he had 2 great G1 matches this week. In fact, this might have been part of the reason why they've eclipsed Okada and Ospreay on this list, because Okada and Ospreay only had that 1 match against each other, whereas Moxley and Ishii both had the chance, just from the way the dates lined up, both had the chance to have 2 excellent singles matches this week. Ishii's were against Moxley, obviously, and one also against Tetsuya Naito, who I think will probably win the G1 now. Ishii lost both those matches, but that doesn't matter, because his performances in both were absolutely spellbinding. His match against Naito was really, really good. Sort of an archetypal G1 main event match with both guys throwing everything at each other, kicking out big moves, reversing stuff, and eventually one of them pulling out, in this case Naito, pulling out the big victory. But his match against Moxley, as I've said, was something truly special. The story of the match really was like Ishii having to dig really deep and do everything to try and put this guy away, this rabid monster in front of him, to the extent where he laid Moxley on a table, went up to the top rope, and did a diving splash to the outside through the table, which is not Tomohiro Ishii behaviour whatsoever. Apart from hitting superplexes now and then, I don't think I can recall. He doesn't fly off the top rope, certainly not, but he did so to try and beat Moxley. It wasn't enough, but even though Ishii's been losing matches, I still think that he's been the MVP of the G1 so far, and potentially, probably even, will be the MVP of it come the end of the tournament. Imagine if he won. He's not going to win. He's never going to win, but imagine if he did. Now, without any further ado, let's take a look at the league table. The same top 3 this week, Ospreay, Ibushi and Gargano, but look at Ishii storming up into 4th place. Okada moves up as well, up to 6th place, level with Volta. Pac moves up to 8th, level with Jay White. And a little bit further down, as we'll see in just a second, Jon Moxley has broken into the top 25. What a year he's having, despite having a pretty torrid first half of the year until he left WWE. It just shows how excellent he is when the chains are off, guys, when the bloody chains are off. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.